long before the rising sun crowned the mountains of Japan, before temples rang with prayers and castles rose like jagged teeth against the sky, there existed a world unseen, a world threaded with shadows, where silent figures moved like whispers across the land. They were not samurai, sworn to honor and blade, nor peasants, bound by toil and harvest. They were something else entirely, neither feared nor celebrated openly, yet their influence reached the highest halls of power. They were the shinobi. Picture this, a lone figure slipping along the ridges of a mist-laden forest, footsteps swallowed by the soft earth, eyes scanning the horizon for unseen threats. Villages slept below, unaware of the eyes that watched from every rooftop and tree. In the quiet of night, these warriors practiced arts both feared and revered: espionage, infiltration, sabotage, assassination. They carried no banners, no proclamations of victory, yet their victories, silent, precise, absolute, echoed across the tapestry of feudal Japan. Their stories are cloaked in rumor, their deeds immortalized in myth. Chronicles speak of shadowed clans whose loyalty was as fluid as the fog they traversed, whose courage was measured not in open combat, but in patience, cunning, and secrecy. In the alleys of history, their presence is felt more than it is recorded, a force shaping conflicts, swaying wars, and deciding the fates of men who thought themselves untouchable. In the shadows of temples and mountains, where sunlight barely reaches, the silent blades moved. They left no trace, save for whispers of awe, terror, and wonder. And though centuries have passed, the legacy of the shinobi endures, a testament to the power of the unseen, and a reminder that history is often written not by those who are seen, but by those who remain forever hidden. Chapter 1: Origins amidst chaos and conflict. Before the grandeur of castles and the clanging of armor could dominate the landscapes of Japan, the land itself was a battlefield. The 15th century unfolded like a tapestry woven with blood and ambition, each thread marked by the endless skirmishes of rival clans. In the shadow of these conflicts, the fertile valleys and craggy mountains became more than mere geography. They were a crucible, shaping the men and women who would walk unseen, who would bend the rules of war itself to their advantage. It was here, in these fractured lands, that the first shinobi emerged. These were not born of privilege or noble lineage. They were peasants, farmers, and those cast aside by society, outcasts with nothing to lose but their lives. Life in such a world demanded more than strength. It demanded cunning, patience, and an intimate understanding of the terrain. Children of the mountains learned to move like the wind, to disappear among shadows, and to listen to the whisper of the forest. Every rock, every stream, every hidden path became a lesson in survival. It was in these small, seemingly insignificant skills that the seeds of the shinobi's art were planted. Picture a farmer-turned-warrior, kneeling in the mud beneath a swollen riverbank, watching enemy scouts cross the valley above. His body pressed low, breath measured, every heartbeat in harmony with the world around him. Conventional armies, with their disciplined lines and polished armor, could not hope to match this intimate knowledge of land and silence. The shinobi's power lay not in brute force, but in anticipation, in the ability to turn invisibility into influence and knowledge into weaponry. Legends would later cloak these early shinobi in mythic abilities, disappearing into thin air, controlling the elements, striking with supernatural precision. Yet the truth was more profound in its simplicity. Their origin was born not of fantasy, but of necessity. Japan, fractured by ceaseless ambition and betrayal, demanded ingenuity. Clans wove alliances as easily as they spilled blood, and those who understood secrecy could tip the balance of power without ever meeting the enemy in open combat. To survive, and to serve, a new kind of warrior was needed, one who embraced cunning over strength, patience over valor, and shadows over sunlight. The valleys themselves became schools. Rivers and forests offered lessons in timing, in concealment, and in observation. Young men and women learned to read the world as one reads a scroll, each gesture, sound, and sent a line of text to be interpreted. Paths once used for trade became routes for reconnaissance. Barns and abandoned dwellings became training grounds. The mountains, seemingly impassable to ordinary soldiers, were classrooms where the first shinobi honed the art of silent travel. Their bodies learned to move like water, flowing around obstacles, leaving no trace of passage. In these formative years, the shinobi were as much spies as they were saboteurs. Villages loyal to one clan might hide them one day, while betraying the same people the next. Loyalty, for these early agents, was a currency traded with careful precision. Survival required not just skill, but adaptability and the ability to navigate the treacherous currents of a world where friends and foes could change with the seasons. This was the shadowed reality that shaped the first shinobi, a reality where trust was rare, and every decision carried the weight of life or death. Their tools were humble but ingenious. Simple ropes and ladders became instruments of stealthy ascents. Smoke, fire, and misdirection transformed into tactical advantages. Even the earth itself, manipulated through tunnels and hidden paths, became an ally. Each innovation was born of necessity, a response to challenges that traditional armies could not meet. In these humble beginnings, the blueprint of shinobi artistry began to take form, a delicate balance of intelligence, strategy, and survival instinct. But the chaos of the era was relentless. Warlords rose and fell with terrifying speed, and the valleys ran red with the blood of those who could not adapt. The first shinobi learned the most important lesson of all. Power often comes to those who are unseen, who move without heralds or banners, and who strike only when the moment is perfect. Their lives were shadows measured not in days, but in moments of observation, in whispered warnings, and in carefully calculated action. Even as their skills grew, so too did the stories that would later envelop them. Chronicles written centuries after their emergence speak of shadows moving like living storms, of warriors who could vanish in plain sight. These accounts exaggerate, yes, but they are rooted in a simple truth. Necessity created a new kind of warrior, one whose mastery of stealth, terrain, and deception allowed them to influence the tides of conflict without ever confronting it openly. In reflecting on the origins of the shinobi, one sees more than the creation of a warrior class. One sees a mirror of the human instinct to adapt, to survive, and to find advantage where the world offers none. The shinobi were born from fear and ambition, yes, but also from intelligence, observation, and the quiet courage of those who dared to navigate the spaces between battle lines. They became witnesses to history as much as participants, shaping events not with sword and shield, but with subtlety and precision. And so, from the valleys and mountains of 15th century Japan, a shadowed legacy began to take shape. Peasants became spies, farmers became strategists, and outcasts became architects of influence. The first shinobi walked unseen, guided by necessity and forged by conflict, leaving behind a world forever altered by their presence. Though centuries would pass and legends would grow ever more fantastical, the truth endures. The shinobi were not born of myth, but of chaos, and in that chaos they learned to wield the shadows themselves. The quiet revelation that lingers today is this: history often remembers the visible, the banners, the swords, the victories, but sometimes the unseen are the ones who shape the course of nations. In the silent forests, along hidden paths, and beneath the watchful eyes of mountains, the first shinobi lived and moved, teaching us that influence is not always announced, and power does not always need light to endure. Chapter 2: The Birth of Clan Strategies. In the quiet valleys and jagged peaks of central Japan, a new order began to emerge from the chaos. The sporadic acts of lone shadow warriors slowly transformed into something far more organized, deliberate, and enduring. As the 15th century wore on and the cries of battle grew louder, the scattered shinobi of earlier generations discovered that survival demanded not only skill, but structure. It was in this crucible of conflict that the first clans were born, bound not by noble lineage or honor, but by secrecy, trust, and shared knowledge. The Iga and Koga regions became the beating heart of this shadowed revolution. Hidden among dense forests and steep mountains, these lands offered natural fortresses where warriors could train in secrecy and live beyond the notice of prying lords. Mist curled around narrow passes, masking movements. Rivers carved deep valleys that doubled as classrooms for stealth and observation. Here, families began to consolidate their knowledge, transforming personal survival skills into a shared heritage. Each clan became a repository of techniques honed through generations, climbing sheer cliffs, disappearing into the night, and striking with precision where no conventional army could reach. The formation of clans introduced discipline and innovation. Every movement, every gesture, every mark in the dirt or scratch on a wall could convey messages invisible to outsiders. Secret codes, cryptic symbols, and subtle signals became the language of the shadowed world. Children were trained not merely to fight, but to think like the wind itself, unpredictable, fluid, and always unseen. Knowledge of poisons, of disguises, of ambushes and decoys was cultivated as seriously as swordsmanship, for intellect could turn a humble peasant into a weapon far deadlier than the finest blade. Families became schools of specialization. One might excel in espionage, blending into villages as merchants, farmers, or wandering monks. Another would master the silent elimination of foes, crafting tools and techniques so subtle that death could arrive unseen, a shadow of inevitability. Guerrilla tactics were refined along mountain ridges and forest trails, teaching young shinobi to strike suddenly and vanish before the enemy could comprehend their presence. Over time, these skills became not merely survival tools, but strategic advantages that could determine the outcome of entire campaigns. The relationship between clans and lords was delicate, often transactional, yet profoundly influential. A daimyo could command armies, but he could not always foresee the hidden hand that shaped his victories and defeats. The shinobi, loyal only as circumstance demanded, became agents of subtlety and manipulation. Their allegiance was measured not in fealty or honor, but in necessity and opportunity. In this way, the modern image of the ninja began to take shape. A shadowy figure whose movements were as elusive as wind, whose presence was felt but rarely seen, and whose loyalty could shift with the currents of war. Training within the clans was rigorous and unyielding. Each day tested mind and body alike. Children learned to read the smallest movements of animals, to interpret the sound of distant footsteps, and to blend into any environment, whether in the glare of sunlight or the gloom of night. They practiced climbing rocky slopes until hands and feet became extensions of the stone itself. They perfected silent movement so that even the rustle of clothing could betray a beginner's presence. And always they were taught to observe, for in shadows, knowledge was as powerful as any blade, and patience could turn the tide of a battle without a single sword being drawn. Rituals bound these clans together, reinforcing loyalty within secrecy. Initiations were as much spiritual as practical, invoking the ancestors whose techniques and wisdom guided each generation. Oral traditions carried stories of victories and failures, each narrative a lesson, each legend a warning. In this way, the clans became living libraries, preserving knowledge that would survive centuries even as the land around them shifted with war and politics. Yet the rise of clan strategies was not merely about survival or skill, it was about transformation. These families took the raw necessity of the shinobi's existence and elevated it into a system capable of influencing the world beyond the mountains. Intelligence became a weapon. Disguise and deception became armor. The ability to vanish and strike at the perfect moment became a form of dominance in a land dominated by open conflict. In the quiet discipline of the clans, a philosophy of shadow warfare was born. Power does not always reside in the strongest arm or loudest voice, but in the unseen hand that shapes events from the darkness. The Iga and Koga shinobi became exemplars of this philosophy. Lords feared the rumors of unseen agents, aware that a single misstep could lead to betrayal, sabotage, or death. Stories of infiltrations, villages spied upon, messages intercepted, plots foiled before they began, spread like whispered wind, instilling both awe and terror. And yet within the clans themselves, life remained disciplined and austere. Joy was measured, fear was constant, and trust was precious. It was a way of life built upon observation, calculation, and patience, qualities that would define the ninja for generations to come. In reflecting upon the birth of clan strategies, one sees more than military innovation. One sees the human instinct to adapt, to codify knowledge, and to preserve advantage in an unpredictable world. The shinobi clans were a mirror of the turbulent times, fractured yet resilient, secretive yet influential, humble in appearance yet powerful in effect. Their mastery of shadows, codes, and silence ensured that the invisible hand of history often moved where few could see. By the end of this period, the figure of the ninja had begun to crystallize in the imagination of Japan. No longer merely a desperate peasant or solitary wanderer, the shinobi had become an institution. Mountains became fortresses, forests became training grounds, and families became schools of strategy whose lessons would echo long after the swords of open battle had rusted. They forged a world where knowledge could kill, patience could conquer, and invisibility could command respect. And so, from the crucible of 15th century warfare, the modern conception of the ninja was born. A shadowy figure who moved with purpose, yet remained unseen. A strategist whose loyalty was never absolute, but measured by the currents of war. A silent witness to history who, through secrecy and cunning, shaped the fates of those who believed themselves untouchable. In the mountains and valleys of Iga and Koga, where mist drifts like memory, the legacy of the clans endures, a testament to the power of organization, knowledge, and the quiet mastery of the unseen. In the echo of their discipline and subtlety, the revelation remains clear. True power often lies not in the strength that is displayed, but in the shadows that move unseen, turning the course of events with precision, patience, and vision. The birth of clan strategies was not merely an evolution of warfare. It was the shaping of a legend that would haunt the imagination of the world for centuries to come. Chapter 3: Masters of Stealth and Deception. In the forests and mountains of feudal Japan, silence was more than absence of sound. It was a language, a discipline, and ultimately a weapon. The shinobi, born from chaos and honed by necessity, evolved beyond mere soldiers into masters of perception itself. Their greatest conquest was not territory, nor lives taken in open combat, but the mastery of invisibility, a subtle dominion over what could be seen, and more importantly, what could not. To witness a ninja was to glimpse a shadow, a fleeting movement that might have been nothing at all. Picture the early morning mist, curling like smoke along the forest floor. A lone figure moves among the trees, its steps unbroken, unclaimed by the earth. Each footfall, each breath is measured. A rustle of leaves, a snap of a twig, every sound becomes a lesson in restraint. These were not mere tricks or skillful hiding. This was philosophy incarnate. The ninja did not fight to be seen, for exposure was weakness. Their art was manipulation of reality itself, bending perception so that they could strike, influence, or escape without ever announcing their presence. Villages and castles alike, they learned to vanish in plain sight. Disguises were meticulously chosen. The wandering monk, the traveling merchant, the humble laborer, each a carefully constructed mask. The art of deception extended beyond clothing. It became choreography. A gesture too quick, a glance too sharp, or a shadow misaligned could betray a lifetime of preparation. Every ninja was trained to inhabit their disguise fully, to live as a ghost among the living, observing all while leaving no mark. The terrain itself became an ally. Mountains and forests were not obstacles, but tools of subtlety. Hillsides could mask movement, streams and rivers could cloak approach. Dense fog and shadowed groves became sanctuaries. Walls and roofs were not barriers, but canvases upon which the shinobi could write their presence invisibly. In this way, the ninja transformed the natural world into an extension of their body and mind, moving with the fluid precision of wind or water, unpredictable yet inevitable. Deception extended into the mind as well as the body. A well-timed rumor, a planted message, a false alarm, these could be as effective as a blade in shaping outcomes. The shinobi understood that human perception is fragile. A mind led to believe one reality can be made to act against another. Victory was often achieved not through open conflict, but through this orchestration of belief. Shadows became strategy, and patience became power. Wars were won and lost not only on battlefields, but in the silent spaces between awareness and ignorance. Training in this discipline was exhaustive. Young shinobi learned to walk silently over leaves, across rooftops, and along narrow beams without disturbance. They practiced scaling walls under moonlight, timing each movement to the rhythm of distant sounds. They studied human behavior as meticulously as they studied the land, learning when to act, when to wait, and when to vanish entirely. Every skill reinforced another, weaving a network of mastery where observation, timing, and subtlety became inseparable. Tools and methods of deception were as diverse as they were ingenious. Smoke bombs and firecrackers could disguise movement or mask retreat. Mirrors and reflective surfaces were employed to confuse pursuers. Poison, subtle and carefully delivered, became a strategic instrument rather than mere murder. Even silence itself was weaponized. A lack of sound could unsettle opponents, forcing them to reveal weaknesses or make mistakes. Every instrument, every tactic, was designed to reinforce invisibility and to amplify the subtlety that was at the heart of the shinobi's power. Yet this mastery was not merely tactical, it was moral and philosophical. To the ninja, being unseen was not deception for deception's sake. It was survival, intelligence, and understanding the world as it truly was, a place where certainty was a luxury and perception shaped reality. They understood that human eyes could be fooled, that attention was finite, and that influence could be exercised without physical confrontation. The world, in their eyes, was a stage of illusion, and they were both actor and director, moving through scenes invisible yet decisive. This philosophy made the ninja unparalleled in influence. Lords who believed themselves secure behind walls and armies found their plans foiled by those who moved like wind among shadows. Battles could be decided by intercepted messages, by secret sabotage, or by psychological manipulation long before any swords clashed. The ninja's subtlety became a force capable of reshaping events, proving that power need not be loud to be absolute. They were architects of unseen realities, shaping the outcomes of conflicts with precision, patience, and unwavering discipline. Even the legends that would later surround them, of vanishing into smoke, walking across water, or controlling the elements, were rooted in the tangible mastery of perception. These myths, though exaggerated, reflected a profound truth. The ninja's greatest weapon was not their body, nor even their tools, but the mind's ability to manipulate what others believed to be real. Illusion and reality intertwined, and within that space, the shinobi thrived. In observing the shinobi at the height of their art, one sees a principle that transcends mere warfare. Influence, control, and survival are often determined not by what is wielded openly, but by the unseen. The ninja moved in this quiet space, where silence, observation, and subtle manipulation created outcomes far greater than any display of brute strength. Their philosophy of stealth became a code not only of action, but of thought, to anticipate, to observe, to act without revealing intent. And so, from the forests, mountains, and hidden paths of feudal Japan, a legend of subtlety emerged. A warrior without visibility, yet whose impact was felt across the land. A strategist whose success depended on being forgotten even as history unfolded around them. A shadow moving among the living, teaching that true mastery comes not from being seen, but from shaping the world while remaining invisible. The quiet revelation of their discipline is enduring. In the theater of life and war, the greatest power is often exercised not through confrontation, but through perception, patience, and the skillful manipulation of reality. The shinobi were more than warriors. They were philosophers of invisibility, turning stealth into art, deception into strategy, and the unseen into history itself. Chapter 4: Weapons Forged for Secrecy. The katana, gleaming and ceremonious, has long been the emblem of the samurai, a symbol of honor, strength, and public power. But the shinobi of feudal Japan followed a different path, one guided by necessity rather than ceremony. For them, a blade that could not be concealed was a liability. A weapon that announced its presence before it struck was a failure. In the shadows of mountains, forests, and secretive valleys, the ninja forged an arsenal designed for silence, surprise, and efficiency, a collection of tools that would allow them to vanish before their enemy even knew they had arrived. Picture a narrow pass, draped in morning mist. A ninja grips a shuriken in hand, its edges sharp and balanced, not for display but for precision. With a flick of the wrist, it disappears into the darkness, striking with a swiftness that seems impossible. Every implement used by the shinobi was an extension of the body, a bridge between intention and action. Grappling hooks and ropes enabled silent ascents over walls or cliffs. Hidden blades and concealed daggers allowed a single hand to deliver lethality in an instant. Smoke bombs obscured movements, creating illusions where only shadows remained. Each weapon was not merely a tool, it was a philosophy incarnate, a testament to efficiency, adaptability, and stealth. Workshops hidden deep within mountain passes or forested valleys became laboratories of ingenuity. Here, families and clans experimented endlessly, transforming ordinary materials into instruments of fear. Wood, metal, and simple oils were combined into mechanisms that could silently poison a cup of tea, release a shuriken with mechanical precision, or set a trap that preyed upon human assumptions. These innovations were guided not by pride, but by pragmatism. Every creation served a purpose, whether for infiltration, escape, or assassination. Failure could be fatal, so the mastery of these implements became as essential as mastery of the body itself. The use of poison was equally precise. Early shinobi understood that the slow, subtle application of toxins could change the course of a battle without risking open combat. Venoms derived from plants, minerals, and even animals were refined in secret, measured in minute quantities to achieve maximum effect. This art required patience and intelligence. Miscalculation could be deadly not only to the target, but to the practitioner. Within these hidden workshops, chemistry and cunning intertwined, giving rise to methods that blurred the boundary between myth and reality. Unlike the honor-bound samurai, whose combat was guided by code, ritual, and visibility, the ninja embraced pragmatism. Death, when it came, arrived quietly and efficiently, leaving neither signature nor claim. Every weapon, every tool, every subtle maneuver was designed to maximize effect while minimizing risk. The shinobi rejected spectacle, for to be seen was to be vulnerable. In this philosophy, invisibility and lethality were inseparable. Tools were extensions of the mind and body, allowing a single shadow to accomplish the work of many. Even the simplest of tools could carry hidden complexity. A rope might conceal a dagger, a bamboo tube might carry poison, a folding fan might become a weapon in skilled hands. Shuriken were perfected not merely to wound, but to confuse, distract, and manipulate. Smoke and mirrors became literal instruments of strategy. The ninja understood that perception could be weaponized. Fear could be implanted before confrontation, turning anticipation into advantage. To face a shinobi was to confront uncertainty itself. This unseen arsenal, combined with the philosophy of stealth, transformed the ninja into specters of death. They were no longer merely skilled humans. They became myths walking the forests, mountains, and villages. Reports of sudden disappearances, silent strikes, and inexplicable accidents spread through the countryside, growing in both terror and legend. Villagers spoke in hushed tones of shadows that moved with intent, leaving no trace but the aftermath of carefully executed precision. Samurai armies, confident in armor and numbers, found themselves vulnerable to forces they could not see, predict, or fully understand. The ingenuity of the ninja extended beyond weapons themselves to the strategies in which they were used. A smoke bomb could create a diversion, allowing infiltration into a guarded castle. A shuriken might distract a sentry, while a hidden blade found its mark. Poison could remove a rival silently, leaving no battlefield to record the deed. Every item was an element of a greater system, a network of actions that turned simple survival into an art of calculated effect. The shinobi did not rely on brute strength, for power without subtlety was meaningless. Instead, they relied on foresight, timing, and the clever orchestration of seemingly ordinary tools. Even as centuries passed, the impression of these weapons lingered in the imagination of Japan and beyond. The shuriken became emblematic of the ninja, a symbol of unseen precision. Smoke bombs and hidden blades inspired awe in folklore. The philosophy of pragmatism over display, of efficiency over honor, became the defining feature of the shinobi in legend. But beneath the myth lay truth. These were men and women who survived by adapting, inventing, and mastering the tools their environment and circumstance demanded. Their weapons were not mere instruments. They were the embodiment of a life lived in shadows, where secrecy was survival and ingenuity determined fate. In reflecting upon the arsenal of the shinobi, one realizes that their true power lay not only in what they wielded, but in how they wielded it. The tools were extensions of mind and body, seamlessly integrated into a philosophy of stealth, deception, and decisive action. They illustrate the principle that sometimes the most profound strength is not in what is seen, but in what is invisible. A simple implement, wielded by a master, could shift the outcome of events far greater than any open battle, reshaping history without fanfare. From the hidden workshops of Iga and Koga to the mist-laden valleys where missions were executed, the weapons forged by the shinobi became inseparable from the warrior himself. Each blade, each shuriken, each smoke bomb carried with it the weight of necessity, the intelligence of strategy, and the precision of mastery. In the hands of those trained in the art of stealth, even the humblest object could become an instrument of fear and influence, leaving behind no evidence but the silence of its execution. And so, the legacy of the ninja's unseen arsenal persists, not merely in the tools themselves, but in the philosophy they represent. Efficiency, pragmatism, subtlety, and adaptability remain at the heart of what it meant to be a shinobi. In every shadow that moves unseen, in every carefully placed distraction, in every silent step taken with purpose, the spirit of these weapons endures. The quiet revelation is simple, yet profound. True power is forged not in spectacle, but in secrecy. The ninja's tools were not just extensions of the body. They were extensions of the mind, the philosophy, and the enduring mastery of being invisible yet decisive. Chapter 5. Infiltration of the Daimyo Courts. Beyond the forests, mountains, and hidden valleys of Japan, where shadows had become second skin to the shinobi, another world awaited. The ornate halls of the daimyo, where silk banners hung, incense curled, and politics moved with the precision of a chessboard. The ninja, trained in the mastery of stealth, now learned a new battlefield, one without swords drawn openly, where the weapons were words, observation, and subtle influence. In these courts, the unseen hand often carried more power than the mightiest army. Picture a bustling marketplace at the edge of a castle town. A man kneels to inspect a wares cart, a string of beads hanging from his belt. To the casual observer, he is a wandering merchant, a peddler of cloth and spices. But in his mind, every movement is deliberate. Every glance is a scan of the world around him. Every overheard conversation, every whispered rumor is meticulously recorded, forming a mosaic of intelligence unseen by those who consider themselves masters of strategy. He is a shinobi. Ninja infiltrations were not acts of brute force, but of patient observation. Disguised as monks, entertainers, or wandering scholars, they entered the courts of feudal lords with a guise so complete that suspicion never lingered. They listened to private conversations, noted the strengths and weaknesses of retainers, and observed the subtle tensions among advisors and generals. Every secret alliance, every whispered betrayal, and every shift in loyalty was a piece of a puzzle that only the unseen could assemble. The art of infiltration demanded more than clever disguise. It required mastery of human behavior. The shinobi became students of the court itself, learning to anticipate actions, predict responses, and manipulate perceptions without ever revealing their own. They could move a room like a silent wind, influencing decisions with a look, a suggestion, or a carefully placed rumor. Their intelligence shaped campaigns before swords were drawn, turning knowledge into a weapon sharper than steel. Daimyo, who employed ninja, understood the value of the unseen. Armies could be assembled, banners could fly, and castles could be fortified, but knowledge was power that armies alone could not secure. A report from a skilled shinobi could reveal a rival's plan, a betrayal among retainers, or the precise moment to strike that would decide the outcome of war. In these subtle ways, the ninja became indispensable to ambitious lords, their presence hidden in plain sight, their influence absolute yet invisible. Infiltration often required months, sometimes years, of preparation. A shinobi could adopt a persona so convincingly that even the most suspicious retainer would fail to detect deception. Their skills extended beyond disguise to etiquette, speech, and behavior. They learned the rituals of the court, the subtleties of honor, and the gestures that conveyed loyalty or dissent. By blending flawlessly into the social fabric, the ninja could extract secrets, manipulate perceptions, and create opportunities that transformed the balance of power. Sabotage was an extension of this work. A misplaced document, a subtly altered plan, or a carefully timed delay could render armies ineffective or alliances fragile. The shinobi understood that physical confrontation was not always necessary. The collapse of trust, the spread of uncertainty, or the manipulation of perception could achieve far greater results. The walls of the court became as treacherous as the battlefield, and the shadows moving within them could tip the fate of entire regions. Even the most powerful lords learned caution in the face of this unseen network. Stories circulated of rival daimyo's plans undone before execution, of trusted advisors suddenly compromised, of victories slipping away as if guided by an invisible hand. These were not miracles, nor divine interventions. They were the work of the shinobi, masters of infiltration and intelligence, shaping outcomes while remaining ghosts in plain sight. Their presence turned the elegant tapestries of the court into stages of silent struggle, where the loudest voices were not always the ones wielding true power. In these courts, the shinobi also acted as diplomats of shadow. A carefully whispered suggestion, a subtly planted alliance, or the silent encouragement of doubt could foster conditions favorable to their patron. They could nurture loyalty or exploit weakness, all while preserving the secrecy of their own intentions. Their artistry lay in making the invisible visible only to those whose actions they sought to influence, leaving the rest of the world unaware of the forces guiding their fates. The consequences of these operations extended far beyond immediate battles. Entire policies, territorial negotiations, and succession plans could be influenced by information gathered and actions taken in secret. Decisions made in the ornate halls under chandeliers of polished wood and candlelight were often the result of intelligence gleaned by the unseen. The ninja were witnesses, manipulators, and sometimes arbiters, ensuring that the currents of power flowed according to knowledge rather than chance. Yet their work demanded detachment and discipline. To infiltrate successfully was to embrace invisibility completely, abandoning ego, emotion, and recognition. A successful mission left no trace. Success was measured by absence, the unbroken facade of normalcy in which a lifetime of observation and subtle intervention could unfold. In these ways, the shinobi transcended the role of warrior, becoming philosophers of action, understanding that influence often carried greater weight than conquest. Through these infiltrations, the political landscape of Japan was shaped by hands that no chronicler recorded, by eyes that were never seen. Decisions that defined regions and dynasties often bore the imprint of shadows, subtle manipulations whose impact echoed long after the shinobi had vanished. Their legacy was not in monuments or banners, but in the flow of history itself, quietly guided by those who understood that the most profound power is exercised not in sight, but in the unseen. The quiet revelation of their work is stark. The course of kingdoms, the rise and fall of lords, and the fates of armies often rested upon whispers, observation, and the careful orchestration of invisible agents. Infiltration was not just a tactic, it was an entire philosophy of influence, one that valued patience, subtlety, and understanding over confrontation. The shinobi became living instruments of this philosophy, moving through the glittering courts like wind through bamboo, imperceptible yet transformative. And so, in the silent corridors of daimyo castles, amid the rich tapestries and gilded halls, the ninja left their mark without ever being seen. Their influence, both subtle and decisive, reminds us that power is not always measured by the strength of armies or the reach of banners. Sometimes, the fate of nations rests in the hands of those who remain in the shadows, guiding events with precision, discretion, and unwavering understanding of the human heart. Chapter 6: Assassins in the Night. As twilight descended over the valleys and villages of feudal Japan, a new kind of danger stirred. A presence felt more than seen, moving with a purpose that was invisible to the ordinary eye. The ninja, masters of stealth and deception, became instruments of lethal precision, turning darkness into both ally and canvas. Where armies clashed with swords and banners, the shinobi operated in silence, their strikes swift, deliberate, and often irreversible. Night was not merely a time of concealment. It was their stage, where skill and patience transformed opportunity into action. Picture a lantern-lit courtyard, the warm glow reflecting off stone walls. A lone figure slips along the shadows, feet barely touching the ground, a blade hidden beneath flowing garments. Their target, a warlord whose ambition threatens a rival clan, or a spy whose knowledge could topple an empire, rests unaware, secure in the illusion of safety. The shinobi moves closer, every heartbeat measured, every breath controlled. Death is not chaotic here. It is calculated, a single thread in the vast web of strategy. Each strike is an answer to necessity, a solution to a problem no army could solve through open confrontation. Assassination was never about cruelty or thrill. It was strategy incarnate. In the turbulent politics of feudal Japan, a well-timed elimination could prevent war, secure a succession, or protect a region from ruin. The ninja understood the delicate balance of cause and consequence. Every action had ripple effects, and precision was paramount. To strike recklessly was to invite disaster. To strike wisely was to alter the course of history without drawing the attention of those whose lives were not theirs to take. Legends grew from these silent acts. Tales circulated of a single ninja entering a heavily guarded fortress and leaving without trace, of one man toppling a general in the dead of night, or of an entire plot undone by a figure who vanished before anyone could react. These stories, often embellished, blurred the line between myth and history, feeding the imagination of villagers, lords, and later chroniclers alike. Even as historians debate the scope of their deeds, the psychological impact was undeniable. Fear, uncertainty, and the knowledge that danger could strike anywhere became a weapon in itself, amplifying the influence of the unseen. The methodology of these assassinations reflected the ninja's philosophical approach to conflict. Timing was sacred, preparation exhaustive, and retreat always anticipated. A blade might be poisoned, a trap might be set, a path of escape mapped with meticulous care. Every movement, every choice, was guided by observation and understanding. They did not fight to be admired. They struck to achieve necessity, leaving the perception of chaos only to those who had no understanding of the precision behind it. Night offered more than concealment. It provided strategy. Shadows masked approach, wind carried sound, and terrain concealed intent. Rooftops, trees, and narrow alleys became instruments of execution, allowing the ninja to navigate spaces that armies could not. Darkness itself became a collaborator, amplifying fear while ensuring invisibility. The interplay between light and shadow, silence and movement, created an environment where the most powerful could be undone by the most disciplined, unseen hand. Even the simplest actions were imbued with meaning. A single arrow might strike a key advisor, a poisoned cup could remove a rival, or a silent hand could sever the thread of betrayal before it unraveled. These acts were never random. They were solutions to the complex problems of governance, loyalty, and survival. The ninja operated as both surgeon and strategist, executing actions with precision and detachment, guided by the understanding that sometimes a single intervention could prevent centuries of chaos. While the public only glimpsed fragments of these events, the memory of their presence lingered in fear and rumor. Villagers whispered of shadows that moved without sound, of figures who vanished into mist, of deaths that seemed impossible yet inexorable. These tales, part myth and part memory, reinforced the mystique of the ninja, embedding them in cultural consciousness as both specters and agents of destiny. Even those in power recognized the invisible influence, learning caution and humility in the presence of forces they could neither see nor predict. The shinobi's artistry in assassination also required emotional discipline. To carry out such acts without hesitation demanded detachment and focus. Personal desire, rage, or pride could not interfere. Each life taken was a calculation, each movement a reflection of training and observation. In this way, the ninja embodied the philosophy of invisibility and subtlety, achieving results through mastery rather than force. Death, when it came, was swift, invisible, and decisive, leaving no trace beyond its consequence. Through these acts, the ninja shaped the political and military landscape of their time. Entire campaigns could be redirected by the sudden removal of a single key figure. Alliances could falter, morale could crumble, and ambitions could be redirected by an unseen hand. History, in this sense, was not solely written by generals and emperors, but by those who moved in shadows, striking precisely when circumstance demanded. The quiet power of assassination became a defining element of the shinobi's legacy, demonstrating that true influence often lies not in visibility, but in the control of events from the unseen. In reflecting on these moments, one understands that the ninja were more than killers. They were philosophers of necessity, masters of cause and effect, and witnesses to the delicate balance of power. Each strike in darkness was both an act of survival and an instrument of strategy. Legends may have exaggerated their feats, painting the ninja as supernatural, but the truth, measured in preparation, patience, and precision, was formidable enough. Their influence was invisible, yet undeniable. Night, silence, and shadow became inseparable from their identity. The fear they inspired was both weapon and legacy. Warriors and lords learned that safety could never be assumed, that the unseen was often more decisive than the visible, and that influence could be exercised with a whisper as effectively as with a sword. Through these acts of lethal precision, the ninja became both myth and reality, leaving an imprint upon history that was at once terrifying and transformative. The quiet revelation lingers through time, in the dance of shadows, in the stillness of night, and in the precision of unseen acts. The course of history can be altered without fanfare or recognition. The ninja were architects of such change, proving that true power often resides in those who strike silently, move unseen, and shape events from the darkness. Chapter 7: The Code of Silence and Loyalty. In the quiet recesses of mountain valleys and hidden training halls, where light struggled to penetrate dense timbers and mist curled like living smoke, the life of a shinobi was defined not by spectacle, but by discipline. Beyond the shadows, beyond the whispered tales of fear and assassination, there existed a strict code, a philosophy that shaped every thought, movement, and decision. This was the code of silence and loyalty, the unseen scaffold upon which the power of the ninja rested. From the moment of initiation, members of a clan were bound by ritual and oath. These ceremonies, often conducted in secrecy beneath the cover of darkness, connected the living with the legacy of ancestors whose techniques and wisdom had survived generations. A young apprentice was reminded that every action carried consequence, that every secret shared must be protected as fiercely as life itself. Loyalty was absolute. Betrayal was unforgivable, met with consequences as swift and final as the strikes they had been trained to execute. Survival depended on trust, but trust was never blind. It was tested, measured, and reaffirmed constantly within the fold of the clan. The philosophy of the ninja extended beyond obedience. Silence was sacred, not merely as a tool for stealth, but as a way of life. Every word spoken carried weight. Every rumor, whether heard or shared, could alter the delicate balance of alliances and influence. Observation became the measure of understanding. A shinobi learned to speak with gesture, expression, and intention, conveying only what was necessary, leaving the rest hidden in shadow. In this restraint, discipline found its highest form, the mastery of both action and inaction. To remain silent, to act only when necessary, became as vital as the skills of infiltration or assassination. Within the training halls, technique and philosophy were inseparable. Young shinobi spent years hunning the body and mind, moving with the precision of water over stone, studying the art of disappearance, and learning to interpret the minutest details of their environment. But equal emphasis was placed on moral and strategic discipline. They were taught that a life lived recklessly, without regard for secrecy or clan loyalty, was not a life at all. Honor, though different from the samurai code, was embedded in duty, in fidelity to clan and mission, and in the careful management of knowledge as both tool and weapon. Betrayal in this world carried consequences beyond death. A traitor not only endangered themselves, but imperiled the entire network of operations, risking the lives of comrades, the success of missions, and the fragile balance of power among lords. The code of loyalty, therefore, was enforced with rigor. Discipline was absolute. A member who faltered in judgment or obedience was swiftly removed, ensuring the integrity of the clan. Survival depended upon this fidelity, for even the most skilled shinobi could be undone by disloyalty within their own ranks. Yet within these constraints, the ninja discovered freedom of a different kind. By surrendering personal ambition and ego to the service of clan and mission, they achieved mastery over both themselves and circumstance. Every skill acquired, the silent step, the hidden blade, the careful observation, was amplified by restraint and purpose. Violence, though lethal and precise, was never indulgent. Every act of action or inaction was measured, deliberate, and aligned with the broader mission. In this way, the ethics of loyalty and silence elevated the shinobi above mere criminality, transforming them into a disciplined force whose effectiveness was born not only from skill, but from philosophy. The transmission of knowledge reinforced these bonds. Techniques, strategies, and insights were never written openly. They were taught in secrecy, handed down from teacher to student, generation to generation. Each secret carried the weight of centuries, a responsibility as heavy as the tools and weapons they wielded. The code demanded that these lessons be protected, preserved, and respected. It was in this careful stewardship of knowledge that the power of the ninja endured, surviving the passage of time even when kingdoms rose and fell around them. Their loyalty extended not only to the clan, but to the mission itself. Infiltration, sabotage, intelligence gathering, and assassination were all conducted under the guidance of strategy and necessity, never personal vendetta. A shinobi understood that emotion or ego could compromise an operation, and therefore cultivated detachment as a skill equal to any sword technique. By merging duty with silence, the ninja forged an ethic that allowed them to navigate a world of deception, danger, and shifting alliances with calm, measured purpose. Even in moments of confrontation, the code shaped behavior. A successful strike was not celebrated with triumph, nor an act of survival boasted with pride. Each victory or action was acknowledged internally, measured against the principles of duty, discretion, and the greater good of the clan. This discipline created warriors who were patient, observant, and unyielding, capable of operating alone or within networks, yet always in harmony with the philosophy of their ancestors. In reflection, the code of silence and loyalty reveals the true essence of the shinobi. They were not merely shadows moving in darkness, nor assassins feared for their sudden strikes. They were philosophers of restraint, students of consequence, and practitioners of precision, whose actions and inactions alike were guided by principles that transcended fear or ambition. The discipline of the ninja became as formidable a weapon as any blade or tool, shaping the outcomes of missions, battles, and alliances with subtlety and purpose. The quiet revelation of their lives lingers. Power and survival are not always measured in noise, visibility, or public acclaim. Often, they reside in silence, in loyalty, and in the mastery of restraint. The shinobi exemplified this truth, living lives of hidden dedication, guided by oaths, rituals, and unspoken understanding. Within the quiet of training halls, along shadowed mountain paths, and in the strategic pauses between action, the philosophy of the ninja endured as much as their skill with blade and stealth. It was in this merging of ethics and expertise that the shinobi transcended legend. They were neither criminals nor mere soldiers. They were a disciplined, adaptive, and secretive force, bound together by oath, loyalty, and the principle that silence could be as decisive as violence. And though the centuries have passed, the echoes of their code remain, a lesson in discipline, a testament to the power of unseen influence, and a reminder that mastery of the world often begins with mastery of oneself. Chapter 7. The Code of Silence and Loyalty. In the quiet recesses of mountain valleys and hidden training halls, where light struggled to penetrate dense timbers and mist curled like living smoke, the life of a shinobi was defined not by spectacle, but by discipline. Beyond the shadows, beyond the whispered tales of fear and assassination, there existed a strict code, a philosophy that shaped every thought, movement, and decision. This was the code of silence and loyalty, the unseen scaffold upon which the power of the ninja rested. From the moment of initiation, members of a clan were bound by ritual and oath. These ceremonies, often conducted in secrecy beneath the cover of darkness, connected the living with the legacy of ancestors whose techniques and wisdom had survived generations. A young apprentice was reminded that every action carried consequence, that every secret shared must be protected as fiercely as life itself. Loyalty was absolute. Betrayal was unforgivable, met with consequences as swift and final as the strikes they had been trained to execute. Survival depended on trust, but trust was never blind. It was tested, measured, and reaffirmed constantly within the fold of the clan. The philosophy of the ninja extended beyond obedience. Silence was sacred, not merely as a tool for stealth, but as a way of life. Every word spoken carried weight. Every rumor, whether heard or shared, could alter the delicate balance of alliances and influence. Observation became the measure of understanding. A shinobi learned to speak with gesture, expression, and intention, conveying only what was necessary, leaving the rest hidden in shadow. In this restraint, discipline found its highest form, the mastery of both action and inaction. To remain silent, to act only when necessary, became as vital as the skills of infiltration or assassination. Within the training halls, technique and philosophy were inseparable. Young shinobi spent years hunning the body and mind, moving with the precision of water over stone, studying the art of disappearance, and learning to interpret the minutest details of their environment. But equal emphasis was placed on moral and strategic discipline. They were taught that a life lived recklessly, without regard for secrecy or clan loyalty, was not a life at all. Honor, though different from the samurai code, was embedded in duty, in fidelity to clan and mission, and in the careful management of knowledge as both tool and weapon. Betrayal in this world carried consequences beyond death. A traitor not only endangered themselves, but imperiled the entire network of operations, risking the lives of comrades, the success of missions, and the fragile balance of power among lords. The code of loyalty, therefore, was enforced with rigor. Discipline was absolute. A member who faltered in judgment or obedience was swiftly removed, ensuring the integrity of the clan. Survival depended upon this fidelity, for even the most skilled shinobi could be undone by disloyalty within their own ranks. Yet within these constraints, the ninja discovered freedom of a different kind. By surrendering personal ambition and ego to the service of clan and mission, they achieved mastery over both themselves and circumstance. Every skill acquired, the silent step, the hidden blade, the careful observation, was amplified by restraint and purpose. Violence, though lethal and precise, was never indulgent. Every act of action or inaction was measured, deliberate, and aligned with the broader mission. In this way, the ethics of loyalty and silence elevated the shinobi above mere criminality, transforming them into a disciplined force whose effectiveness was born not only from skill, but from philosophy. The transmission of knowledge reinforced these bonds. Techniques, strategies, and insights were never written openly. They were taught in secrecy, handed down from teacher to student, generation to generation. Each secret carried the weight of centuries, a responsibility as heavy as the tools and weapons they wielded. The code demanded that these lessons be protected, preserved, and respected. It was in this careful stewardship of knowledge that the power of the ninja endured, surviving the passage of time even when kingdoms rose and fell around them. Their loyalty extended not only to the clan, but to the mission itself. Infiltration, sabotage, intelligence gathering, and assassination were all conducted under the guidance of strategy and necessity, never personal vendetta. A shinobi understood that emotion or ego could compromise an operation, and therefore cultivated detachment as a skill equal to any sword technique. By merging duty with silence, the ninja forged an ethic that allowed them to navigate a world of deception, danger, and shifting alliances with calm, measured purpose. Even in moments of confrontation, the code shaped behavior. A successful strike was not celebrated with triumph, nor an act of survival boasted with pride. Each victory or action was acknowledged internally, measured against the principles of duty, discretion, and the greater good of the clan. This discipline created warriors who were patient, observant, and unyielding, capable of operating alone or within networks, yet always in harmony with the philosophy of their ancestors. In reflection, the code of silence and loyalty reveals the true essence of the shinobi. They were not merely shadows moving in darkness, nor assassins feared for their sudden strikes. They were philosophers of restraint, students of consequence, and practitioners of precision, whose actions and inactions alike were guided by principles that transcended fear or ambition. The discipline of the ninja became as formidable a weapon as any blade or tool, shaping the outcomes of missions, battles, and alliances with subtlety and purpose. The quiet revelation of their lives lingers. Power and survival are not always measured in noise, visibility, or public acclaim. Often, they reside in silence, in loyalty, and in the mastery of restraint. The shinobi exemplified this truth, living lives of hidden dedication, guided by oaths, rituals, and unspoken understanding. Within the quiet of training halls, along shadowed mountain paths, and in the strategic pauses between action, the philosophy of the ninja endured as much as their skill with blade and stealth. It was in this merging of ethics and expertise that the shinobi transcended legend. They were neither criminals nor mere soldiers. They were a disciplined, adaptive, and secretive force, bound together by oath, loyalty, and the principle that silence could be as decisive as violence. And though the centuries have passed, the echoes of their code remain, a lesson in discipline, a testament to the power of unseen influence, and a reminder that mastery of the world often begins with mastery of oneself. Chapter 9: Legends and the Fear They Wove. Long after the forests and mountains grew quiet, and the banners of samurai lords were furled in the ebb and flow of empires, the shadows of the ninja persisted, not in armies, but in stories. Tales passed by firelight, whispered in markets, or immortalized in woodblock prints, elevated these secretive figures from mere mortals to beings of near-mythical power. They were said to vanish into thin air, to leap impossibly across rooftops, to summon storms and command spirits. The imagination transformed necessity into miracle, turning trained discipline into legend, and cunning into the uncanny. Picture a village on a misty evening. The wind whispers through narrow alleys, and suddenly a shadow moves without sound, a figure crossing rooftops as if guided by the wind itself. Windows shiver with the invisible passage of a being unseen. Livelihoods were spared or lost, secrets protected or stolen, and the people only glimpsed fragments of the events that had unfolded. To them, it seemed as if the ninja possessed powers that defied nature. And in truth, they did, though the magic lay not in sorcery, but in mastery of the human mind and the environment itself. The mythology of the ninja served a purpose as deliberate as any weapon in their arsenal. Fear is a force as potent as steel, and the stories that grew around these shadow warriors amplified their reach. A well-placed rumor, an inexplicable death, or an untraceable sabotage could terrify rivals far more effectively than an open confrontation. Villagers and soldiers alike were made to question their own perception, to doubt what was real, and to respect the invisible hand that could strike anywhere, at any time. In this way, legend became a tool, woven into the very fabric of psychological warfare. Art and literature of the time reflected this interplay between fact and fiction. Woodblock prints depicted figures moving like ghosts, masked faces peering from trees, and shuriken flying with unerring precision. Storytellers portrayed ninja as beings who could elude capture, dodge bullets or arrows, and leave opponents confounded. Each image, each tale, reinforced the perception that the ninja were not simply skilled humans, but forces of nature, capable of feats beyond comprehension. Yet the extraordinary image rested upon a foundation of rigorous training, careful observation, and meticulous planning. The line between myth and reality blurred, but the truth, the disciplined cunning of the shinobi, was the source of every imagined miracle. The ninjas' fearsome reputation was amplified by their understanding of human psychology. They studied how uncertainty could unnerve, how anticipation could paralyze, and how the mere threat of invisible intervention could shape behavior. A lord who knew that spies might be present in his court would second-guess every plan. A soldier who believed that enemies could strike unseen would hesitate at every step. In this sense, their influence extended far beyond the physical. It touched thought itself, making legend and reality inseparable. Even within the ninja clans, these stories held weight. While secrecy and discipline were paramount, the aura of invincibility cultivated both respect and caution among members. Young apprentices were inspired, learning not only the physical techniques of stealth, sabotage, and assassination, but also the subtle art of shaping perception. Every act of cleverness, every silent strike, and every successful infiltration reinforced the collective mythos, binding the clan through shared knowledge and awe. The legend, in a way, became a living tool of survival, enhancing the effectiveness of the very skills it dramatized. Folklore often imbued ninja with supernatural abilities, walking across water, disappearing into flames, or evading capture with impossible agility. While such accounts stretched the imagination, they reflected a truth about human perception. The shinobi's mastery of terrain, timing, disguise, and distraction could make a skilled human appear inhuman. To the untrained eye, a carefully executed infiltration could indeed seem like magic. Their influence on culture, then, was both practical and psychological, transforming the perception of power in ways that endured far longer than any single mission or battle. Stories of this nature spread fear and respect in equal measure. Even samurai, disciplined in combat and armored in steel, were not immune to the legend of the ninja. Commanders hesitated, plans were reconsidered, and security measures intensified, all in response to the mere possibility of an invisible enemy. The aura of omnipresence created by these legends was a force multiplier, magnifying the impact of even small operations. A single ninja, operating in secrecy, could reshape the confidence, decisions, and morale of entire armies without lifting a sword in battle. Yet beneath these exaggerated tales lay undeniable skill. The true magic of the ninja was mastery of observation, timing, and human behavior. They understood the psychology of fear and expectation, the manipulation of light and shadow, and the art of moving undetected. Their discipline allowed them to control outcomes by creating the illusion of omnipotence. Each whispered rumor, each inexplicable disappearance, and each perceived impossibility reinforced the perception that they were more than mortal, even as it reflected the reality of training, cunning, and strategy. This fusion of reality and myth ensured that the legacy of the ninja would endure beyond the feudal era. Centuries later, in stories, films, and cultural memory, they remain figures who straddle the line between history and imagination. The fear they wove, the legends they inspired, and the skill they possessed continue to captivate, reminding us that perception is as powerful as action, and that influence can endure long after the battlefield has fallen silent. In reflecting on these legends, one perceives a fundamental truth. Mastery over the human mind can rival mastery over armies. The shinobi, through calculated fear, strategic deception, and meticulous skill, became larger than life, not through supernatural power, but through human ingenuity amplified by mystery. Their mythos reminds us that the stories we tell and the fears we inherit are often grounded in reality, shaped by disciplined minds capable of extraordinary effect. The quiet revelation lingers across centuries. The legends of the ninja are not merely exaggerations of history, but echoes of human intellect, strategy, and psychological mastery. Every tale of vanishing into thin air, commanding the elements, or controlling spirits is a testament to the unseen skill, patience, and cunning of men and women who moved with purpose through shadow. They transformed perception into power, imagination into influence, and reality into legend. Even today, the image of the ninja persists, silent, invisible, and capable of reshaping events with the mere possibility of their presence. Their legacy is as much about the stories they inspired as the missions they executed. And in that enduring blur between myth and reality, the shinobi endure as masters not only of the physical world, but of the human imagination, leaving a fearsome and fascinating imprint that time has not erased. Chapter 10: Alliances with Samurai Lords. Beneath the banners of warlords, amid the gleaming armor and disciplined ranks of samurai, the ninja existed in a world unseen, their presence acknowledged only by those who understood their value. While folklore often painted them as solitary shadows, roaming at whim through forests and villages, the reality was more complex. Many shinobi were bound by contracts, serving daimyo with precision, discretion, and unwavering focus. Their allegiance was not to fame, honor, or battlefield glory. It was to the mission, the clan, and the strategic objectives of those they served. Picture a samurai lord in his council hall, maps spread across a polished wooden table, advisors speaking in measured tones. Outside, unseen in the twilight, a team of ninja prepares to move. Their mission: gather intelligence, disrupt enemy supply lines, or secure a strategic path through hostile territory. These operations were not mere espionage. They were instruments of power, extending the Lord's reach into places conventional forces could never hope to penetrate. In this way, the ninja became silent partners in governance and warfare, bridging the gap between brute force and subtle influence. The alliances between ninja clans and daimyo were deeply pragmatic. Loyalty was neither sentimental nor personal. It was contractual, structured through oaths and mutual benefit. A clan would offer its expertise, skill, and discretion, and in return, the lord provided protection, resources, and legitimacy. This careful reciprocity ensured the survival of the shinobi while amplifying the power of the daimyo. Each party understood its role. The lord wielded visible authority, while the ninja operated in the shadows, shaping outcomes without acknowledgement or reward beyond the success of the mission. Through these alliances, ambitious samurai were able to outmaneuver rivals in ways armies alone could not accomplish. The ninja's abilities in intelligence gathering, sabotage, and covert diplomacy created opportunities to preempt attacks, dismantle opposition, and secure territory without prolonged conflict. A single, well-executed mission could alter the balance of power, allowing a daimyo to consolidate influence while maintaining the illusion of uncontested dominance. In this quiet partnership, strategy was executed not only in the open fields of battle, but in the corridors of perception, rumor, and secrecy. The shinobi's presence was often invisible yet indispensable. Samurai commanders, disciplined in the art of war, recognized that battlefield prowess alone could not secure victory in a land rife with shifting alliances, betrayals, and rival ambitions. Intelligence, discretion, and the precise execution of covert operations became as critical as the sword. The ninja, trained to observe, infiltrate, and intervene without exposure, filled this crucial role, operating in tandem with conventional forces while remaining unseen. Their work was a silent extension of authority, shaping events far from the scrutiny of historians or chroniclers. Even within these pragmatic alliances, the philosophy of loyalty persisted. The shinobi were bound first to their clan and mission, and secondarily to the objectives of their daimyo. This dual fidelity required discipline, to act decisively on orders without overstepping, to execute plans without attracting attention, and to preserve the secrecy that ensured both their survival and their effectiveness. In this delicate balance, the ninja transformed from shadowy outcasts into structured agents of influence, recognized and respected, though rarely seen. The strategic partnership extended to both offense and defense. On campaign, Ninja could disrupt enemy formations, intercept communications, and neutralize threats that would otherwise require open combat. During periods of political tension, they served as spies, messengers, and even negotiators, their ability to navigate hidden networks allowing Daimyo to maintain leverage in turbulent times. By integrating covert operations with conventional military strategy, these alliances created a symbiosis that was as effective as it was invisible. The visible force secured the land, while the unseen shaped the circumstances that ensured its stability. These partnerships were forged over decades, maintained through meticulous adherence to discipline and guided by the principles of reciprocity and strategic utility. Daimyo trusted the ninja not because they were feared, but because their precision, patience, and reliability guaranteed outcomes that armies alone could not achieve. In turn, clans flourished under protection, resources, and the legitimacy granted by association with powerful lords. This mutual dependency allowed both parties to thrive in an environment defined by shifting loyalties and relentless ambition. Yet even in service, the shinobi remained separate from the honor culture of the samurai. Their victories were invisible, their methods uncelebrated, and their influence recognized only in hindsight by those who understood the course of events. While the samurai measured success through valor and recognition on the battlefield, the ninjas' triumphs were measured in subtlety, discretion, and the successful execution of complex plans. They were the hidden hand that allowed visible power to flourish, the silent architects of influence that shaped regions and defined dynasties. The enduring legacy of these alliances lies not only in the history they shaped, but in the philosophical model they embodied. Power is most secure when balanced between visibility and discretion, between the celebrated and the unseen. The ninja, operating in the shadows, exemplified this principle, proving that influence need not be obvious to be decisive. Their cooperation with samurai lords illustrates a sophisticated understanding of strategy, one that blends action and observation, force and intelligence, violence and subtlety. In the quiet spaces of history, where maps are folded and scrolls remain unread, the impact of these alliances is written in absence rather than presence. Regions were secured, enemies neutralized, and ambitions fulfilled, all without public acknowledgement. The ninja's partnership with Daimyo demonstrates that the most profound contributions are not always documented. Some victories are felt, not seen, and some legacies endure precisely because they are invisible. The quiet revelation is profound. History is not solely shaped by those who march openly into battle, nor by the generals who command armies from gilded halls. It is also written by those who move unseen, guided by discipline, loyalty, and purpose. The alliances between ninja and samurai lords exemplify this truth, a delicate, pragmatic bond where shadow and light, secrecy and authority converge to shape the destiny of a land. Within this balance, the ninja secured their place in feudal Japan, unseen, indispensable, and masterful in the art of silent power. Chapter 11. The Peak of Ninja Influence. By the late Sengoku period, Japan had become a land carved by ambition, blood, and the relentless pursuit of power. Warlords clashed across valleys, forests, and rivers, their armies moving like tides across the fractured terrain. Amidst this chaos, the ninja emerged not merely as shadows, but as decisive forces whose influence reached far beyond the battlefield. Their presence was felt in the corridors of power, along mountain passes, and across the silent movements of espionage that shaped the fate of entire provinces. This was the zenith of their craft, the period when shinobi were both feared and indispensable. Picture the rolling mists over the Iga and Koga mountains. Clans trained with relentless discipline, hunting every aspect of stealth, survival, and subtle combat. Young apprentices practiced climbing sheer cliffs with bare hands, moving like wind through forests, and disappearing into the folds of terrain that even seasoned samurai could not navigate. Each member was molded into an instrument of precision, combining physical skill with observation, strategy, and patience. In this crucible, the ninja refined not only their techniques but their philosophy, mastery over environment, timing, and human perception. Their influence was felt in campaigns where open battle might have led to costly losses. A single team of ninja could disrupt supply lines, sabotage fortifications, or neutralize key leaders with near-perfect efficiency. Daimyo relied on them as extensions of their authority, silent operatives who operated where armies could not venture. A fortress deemed impregnable could be rendered vulnerable through subtle manipulation. A rival lord's strategy could collapse under the weight of unseen intervention. The shinobi's art transformed warfare itself, blending intelligence, sabotage, and psychological mastery into a force beyond the reach of traditional armies. Clans were highly organized, each with distinct codes, techniques, and philosophies passed down through generations. Iga and Koga, in particular, became crucibles of training, where students spent years perfecting not only the physical arts, but also the strategic principles of espionage, infiltration, and survival. Training was unrelenting. Endurance, stealth, disguise, and intelligence gathering were drilled with obsessive rigor. Yet skill alone was insufficient. The shinobi cultivated patience, detachment, and careful observation. To strike too soon, reveal oneself, or act without consideration was failure. In this disciplined environment, the ninja became more than warriors. They became masters of influence. Disguise and deception reached their highest refinement during this period. A ninja could become a monk, a merchant, or a wandering entertainer, slipping into towns, castles, and camps unnoticed. Observing routines, mapping patrols, and exploiting psychological vulnerabilities, they altered events from within. Samurai might dominate the battlefield with valor and steel, but the ninja controlled the unseen currents of war, morale, perception, and timing. This strategic subtlety allowed them to operate in places samurai could not reach, shaping outcomes without leaving evidence and securing victories invisible to chroniclers. In the political realm, the ninja's role was equally decisive. Daimyo, who understood their value, used them to gather intelligence, disrupt rivals, and maintain control over contested regions. Alliances could be engineered, betrayal exposed, and plots neutralized before they bore fruit. Through these silent interventions, shinobi became architects of policy and power, wielding influence that rivaled that of generals and governors. Their mastery of intelligence gathering and clandestine operations elevated them to positions of strategic indispensability, blending the art of war with the subtlety of diplomacy. Legends flourished alongside these achievements. Stories of single-handed infiltration, flawless sabotage, and vanishing acts circulated among villages and armies alike. Fear of the unseen magnified their influence. Even when not present, the possibility of ninja intervention shaped decisions, altered strategies, and restrained ambition. The psychological impact of the ninja was as significant as their tangible actions, creating a force multiplier that magnified the effects of a small number of operatives across vast landscapes. Yet behind every story and act of legend lay disciplined preparation and meticulous planning. Missions were never impulsive. Success depended on intelligence, timing, and restraint. Every detail was observed, every contingency considered. To operate without detection required mastery of movement, terrain, and human psychology. This blend of skill, strategy, and patience distinguished the ninja from mere assassins or thieves, establishing them as a sophisticated, highly trained corps whose influence extended across both the battlefield and the halls of power. The peak of ninja influence also saw the codification of their practices. Manuals, secret transmissions, and oral traditions preserved the techniques and strategies of generations. Clans competed for mastery of espionage and infiltration, yet shared a philosophy grounded in discipline, loyalty, and subtlety. Violence was never indulgent. It was applied with precision, necessity, and the understanding that its greatest power lay in effect rather than spectacle. In this, the shinobi achieved a balance between skill and philosophy, integrating ethics, loyalty, and practicality into their operations. The legacy of this era endures because of the quiet, transformative impact the ninja had on Japanese history. They shaped campaigns, protected ambitions, and influenced the course of battles without ever appearing in the chronicles as prominently as samurai lords. Their contributions were invisible, yet decisive. Their influence, silent, yet profound. Where armies clashed openly, it was the ninja who ensured that strategies succeeded, risks were mitigated, and opportunities exploited. They were the architects of outcomes, the unseen hand guiding events from the shadows. As the Sengoku period waned and Japan moved toward unification, the prominence of the ninja gradually diminished. Yet their mastery of terrain, intelligence, and stealth remained unparalleled. They had reached the height of their craft, operating at a level where fear, respect, and necessity converged. The zenith of their influence was defined not by recognition or glory, but by efficacy, the quiet certainty that events could be shaped with skill, precision, and invisibility. The quiet revelation of this era is unmistakable. History is often shaped by those whose actions leave no trace. The ninja of the late Sengoku period exemplify this truth. Through patience, discipline, and mastery of both environment and human behavior, they became pivotal actors in the drama of their age. Feared, respected, and strategically indispensable, they operated where others could not, leaving a legacy as silent architects of history, whose effects reverberated far beyond the battlefield, long after the banners had fallen and the chronicles had been written. Chapter 12. Decline in the Age of Peace. The clanging of swords, the roar of battle, and the smoke of burning fortresses gradually faded from the valleys and mountain passes of Japan. The country, once fractured by ambition, betrayal, and the ceaseless clash of clans, had found stability under the Tokugawa shogunate. Peace settled over the land like a heavy mist, stilling rivers of blood that had for centuries carried the ambitions of Daimyo. In this new era, the shadows that had thrived amidst chaos, the ninja, found themselves without a stage. Their skills, honed for war, espionage, and subtle influence, were suddenly in diminishing demand. Picture the misty forests of Iga and Koga, once alive with the footsteps of apprentices and masters, now quieter than ever. Training halls that had echoed with discipline and whispered strategy stood silent, the air carrying only memories of precision, secrecy, and relentless practice. Clans that had once commanded influence over lords and territories faced a choice: disband, adapt, or preserve their knowledge in secrecy. Many chose the latter, passing techniques and philosophy quietly from teacher to student, ensuring that even as their role in the political and military landscape faded, the essence of the shinobi endured. The decline was not simply a matter of opportunity lost, it was a transformation of identity. The ninja, whose lives had been defined by infiltration, sabotage, and the invisible shaping of history, now existed in the margins of society. Some became farmers, artisans, or laborers, their skills redirected toward mundane survival, yet never fully abandoned. Others became advisors or security specialists for lords who valued discretion over glory. Even in these new roles, the principles of discipline, observation, and restraint persisted, applied to tasks far removed from the battlefield. Yet for those who remained within the fold, secrecy became a fortress of its own. Hidden within the mountains and forests, isolated from the bustle of towns and cities, ninja preserved their arts like fragile treasures. Scrolls, techniques, and philosophies were carefully guarded, passed down only to the most trusted disciples. Rituals, oaths, and codes of conduct were maintained, ensuring that the wisdom of centuries of practice did not vanish with the decline of war. In these secluded enclaves, the shadows lingered, not as instruments of power, but as custodians of memory, waiting for the right moment to be acknowledged by those seeking truth behind the legend. The myth of the ninja began to eclipse reality in this era of peace. Tales of impossible feats, supernatural abilities, and vanishing acts spread through art, theater, and folklore. For the common people, the ninja had become more legend than flesh, a symbol of fear, cunning, and mystery rather than active participants in the affairs of men. Yet beneath these stories lay the enduring reality of their discipline: intelligence, patience, observation, and strategic thinking. The myths amplified their presence, but it was the philosophy and training that formed the invisible backbone of their legacy. This period of decline also underscored a paradox. While their immediate influence waned, the principles of the ninja became more enduring than the battles they had once fought. The focus on adaptability, precision, and foresight, skills honed over generations, remained applicable in the quiet arenas of peacetime, in politics, business, and personal survival. The art of observation, the power of subtlety, and the mastery of patience were lessons not bound to war, but to life itself. In this way, the decline of the ninja as active operatives did not signify the end of their relevance. It marked the transformation of their influence into a more enduring, if hidden, form. Many clans carefully concealed their existence, appearing only when necessary to maintain their own survival or honor agreements with influential families. Stories circulated of shadowy figures seen moving across village rooftops, or of silent intercessions in disputes and thefts, echoes of a time when their presence had been decisive. These glimpses of the past reminded both peasants and lords that the legacy of the shinobi had not vanished entirely. It had merely retreated into secrecy, embedded in ritual, training, and the quiet vigilance of those who continue to carry its wisdom. In reflection, the Age of Peace revealed the dual nature of the ninja's existence. They were products of conflict, shaped and sharpened by centuries of war, yet capable of transformation into guardians of knowledge, ethics, and discipline. Their value no longer lay in immediate action, but in the principles they embodied: restraint, patience, loyalty, and precision. The decline of their era did not erase their mastery. It transfigured it, leaving a heritage preserved in silence, ready to inform generations who might seek to understand the art and philosophy behind the legend. The quiet revelation endures. True mastery is not measured only by action, but by preservation. The ninja, in retreating from the open arenas of war, ensured that their teachings would survive beyond the rise and fall of armies. Their influence became latent, waiting to be rediscovered by those who would see beyond myth and fear, to grasp the enduring strategies of observation, patience, and subtle power. Theirs was a legacy of shadows, not always seen, but profoundly felt across time. Even as Japan's mountains, forests, and villages settled into peace, the invisible imprint of the ninja remained. Discipline cultivated in secrecy, loyalty forged through rigorous oaths, and the philosophy of measured action persisted in the hidden corridors of tradition. The decline of their operational power did not diminish the lessons they imparted: that survival, influence, and strategy often thrive not in spectacle, but in quiet mastery, and that the unseen hand can shape history as surely as the sword in open battle. The end of conflict marked the beginning of remembrance. The ninja, once indispensable instruments of war and espionage, became custodians of knowledge and myth. Their presence receded from history's chronicles, yet endured in the ethos of discipline, subtlety, and strategy. And in that endurance lies the essence of their power. Though unseen, their influence resonates through time, whispering the truths of skill, restraint, and silent mastery to all who seek to understand the shadowed architects of Japan's past. Chapter 13: Preservation of Secret Knowledge. As the smoke of war faded from the valleys and the clang of swords softened into memory, the ninja faced a new battle, one not against armies, but against time itself. The unification of Japan had brought order, yet with peace came obsolescence for warriors whose mastery had been forged in chaos. For surviving clans, the challenge was survival of a different kind, preserving the techniques, philosophies, and secrets that had defined their craft for centuries. In the quiet recesses of mountain halls and hidden valleys, the art of the shinobi was safeguarded, a treasure of wisdom woven in secrecy. Picture a dimly lit chamber deep within the mountains of Iga, lanterns casting flickering shadows across polished wooden floors. Scrolls, inked in careful calligraphy, line the shelves, each containing diagrams of techniques, strategies of infiltration, and recipes for poisons whose potency could turn the tide of conflict. Apprentices sit cross-legged, eyes attentive, absorbing lessons passed from master to student in hushed tones. Each word, each gesture, carries the weight of generations. Knowledge is a living entity, and within these halls, it is nurtured, protected, and transmitted with solemn reverence. Clans like Igarayu and Kogarayu became the custodians of this ancient wisdom. Their role shifted from active operatives to guardians, preserving the philosophy of stealth, discipline, and observation. Instruction was never casual, it was earned. Only those deemed trustworthy and capable were allowed to study the intricate arts, for a single mistake could reveal secrets that generations had labored to protect. Oral tradition complemented written scrolls, ensuring that knowledge survived even if physical records were destroyed. Memory became as critical as parchment, embedding survival strategies into the minds of those chosen to carry the legacy forward. The ninja's methods were encoded not only in techniques but in philosophy. The principles of patience, adaptability, and observation, cultivated over decades of shadowed warfare, were as central as the mastery of tools or the silent step. Students were taught to read not only terrain and patrols, but human behavior, anticipating reactions, exploiting patterns, and exercising restraint when action could compromise both mission and secrecy. Each lesson reinforced the understanding that power was not measured in visibility, but in precision, discretion, and foresight. Even as Japan embraced stability under the Tokugawa shogunate, the preservation of knowledge required vigilance. Hidden passages, secret rooms, and coded writings ensured that outsiders could not access these teachings. Masters guarded scrolls as fiercely as any blade, and rituals reinforced the weight of responsibility. The art of concealment extended beyond operations into the very methods of instruction, embedding secrecy into every aspect of life. The ninja, once architects of invisible campaigns, had become stewards of memory, ensuring that the strategies which shaped history would not vanish with the passing of their era. These preserved teachings influenced more than the small circle of disciples. Over time, elements of ninja philosophy permeated broader martial traditions. Techniques of observation, timing, and precision found their way into samurai training, while methods of evasion and strategy informed security practices across regions. The codified knowledge became a bridge between the hidden and visible worlds, a legacy that persisted in practice, culture, and imagination. The ninja's influence endured, subtly, in ways that were rarely acknowledged but consistently felt. The discipline required for preservation was profound. It demanded patience that matched years of wartime observation, adaptability to changing circumstances, and absolute fidelity to the principles of secrecy. Each master instructor understood that the survival of their craft depended not on public acclaim, but on meticulous transmission. A single lapse could expose generations of work. In this era, the art of the ninja became less about action and more about endurance. The endurance of knowledge, the endurance of philosophy, and the endurance of a legacy that transcended immediate necessity. Art, folklore, and popular imagination became allies in preservation as well. The mysterious image of the ninja captured the imagination of storytellers, playwrights, and artists, transforming clandestine practice into cultural myth. Though exaggerated in its depiction, capable of disappearing into thin air or manipulating supernatural forces, these stories carried kernels of truth, the mastery of environment, perception, and psychological insight. In entertaining the public, these tales also safeguarded the memory of the ninja, ensuring that even as their operational relevance waned, the fascination they inspired would persist across centuries. The ninja's legacy in this era was defined by a duality: invisibility in the world of action, yet visibility in the cultural imagination. They became living vessels of history, embodiments of principles that could not be recorded in conventional chronicles. Observation, patience, precision, and adaptability, qualities essential for survival in a violent age, were passed silently from master to student, waiting for those who would recognize their value. In this way, the art of the shinobi endured, preserved not in public fame, but in the quiet corridors of memory, discipline, and tradition. Even today, the echoes of their knowledge can be traced in the martial arts, security practices, and stories that populate Japan and the wider world. The preserved scrolls of Igarayu and Kogarayu and the oral instructions carried through generations reflect a philosophy that is timeless, that preparation, discretion, and careful observation are more potent than force, that patience and restraint can achieve outcomes that brute strength cannot, and that the unseen hand can shape history as profoundly as the visible sword. The quiet revelation remains: the true power of the ninja was never in spectacle, but in enduring wisdom. Through meticulous preservation, they ensured that the principles forged in shadows, under threat of death, would survive peace, stability, and the passage of centuries. Knowledge became their most precious weapon, and in its careful stewardship, the ninja achieved a form of immortality. In the stillness of mountain halls, amid the rustle of leaves and the flicker of lantern light, the spirit of the shinobi endures. Their lessons, encrypted in scrolls and memory, continue to whisper of observation, patience, and adaptability, reminding us that mastery is as much about subtlety and restraint as it is about action. Though the world has moved beyond the age of constant war, the legacy of the ninja persists in those willing to seek it, offering a window into a history written not in the open, but in shadows. And so, the preservation of secret knowledge stands as the final testament of the ninja, a lineage of thought, skill, and philosophy that transcends time. Invisible to the world, yet enduring in influence, the ninja remain silent teachers, their wisdom waiting to be discovered, remembered, and honored by those who understand the delicate power of patience, observation, and adaptability, the true art of the shadowed warrior. Chapter 14: Echoes in Popular Culture. Centuries passed, empires rose and fell, and the mists of time began to obscure the valleys and mountains where the ninja once moved unseen. Yet the shadow of the shinobi refused to vanish entirely. From the inked pages of Edo period literature to the vibrant stages of kabuki theaters, and later onto the silver screen of modern cinema, the ninja emerged from historical obscurity into legend. Their stories were retold, embellished, and romanticized, transforming disciplined operatives into figures of myth and imagination, whose appeal transcended generations and continents. Imagine a village in the early 1700s, where storytellers gather crowds under lantern light. With hushed tones and careful dramatization, they recount tales of silent warriors, capable of vanishing in the blink of an eye, moving across rooftops as if gravity had no hold, and striking with uncanny precision. The audience gasps at the imagined feats: one man foiling armies alone, escaping capture through supernatural cunning. In these tales, the line between fact and fiction begins to blur, yet the underlying truth persists: a recognition that stealth, strategy, and intelligence were extraordinary human achievements, capable of producing results that seemed magical to the untrained eye. The popular portrayal of ninja grew increasingly sensationalized over the centuries. By the time woodblock prints and illustrated stories proliferated during the Edo period, the shinobi had evolved into a symbol of mystery, danger, and supernatural prowess. Artists depicted them disappearing into shadows, controlling elements, or walking through fire unscathed. Each depiction enhanced their mythos, amplifying fear and fascination among the public. What had once been disciplined human skill became interwoven with imagination, transforming reality into spectacle, yet preserving the essence of what had made these shadow warriors remarkable. In modern times, cinema and television further amplified the legend. Ninja became central figures in martial arts films, comic books, and global media. Audiences worldwide were captivated by the idea of the silent, highly skilled warrior, moving unseen, striking decisively, and embodying a combination of intellect and physical prowess that defied ordinary comprehension. Though the historical context often vanished in the telling, the fascination endured, embedding the image of the ninja into global popular culture as a symbol of intrigue, cunning, and adaptability. Yet behind every exaggerated story lies a foundation rooted in reality. The feats portrayed on stage or screen, vanishing acts, acrobatics, and improbable escapes, were inspired by centuries of disciplined training, strategic thinking, and careful observation. The ninja's intelligence gathering, psychological insight, and mastery of terrain created outcomes that, to the casual observer, appeared almost supernatural. Popular culture, while sensational, inadvertently preserved the principles that defined the shinobi: observation, adaptability, stealth, and patience. The evolution of ninja imagery also reflects a broader human fascination with the unseen. The allure of operating beyond perception, of shaping outcomes without recognition, resonates across cultures and eras. Ninja became icons not only of martial skill, but of ingenuity and resilience, figures who embodied the human capacity to navigate danger, manipulate circumstance, and influence events quietly yet decisively. Their mystique lies in the tension between visibility and invisibility, the interplay between action and perception, and the enduring appeal of mystery itself. In Japan, the historical foundations remain tangible in the surviving schools of Igarayu and Kogarayu. Here, the art of the ninja continues, practiced in secrecy, discipline, and careful adherence to centuries-old techniques. The historical ninja and the cinematic figure exist in parallel, one rooted in necessity, observation, and intelligence, the other in imagination, romance, and exaggeration. Yet both share the same lineage of shadowed mastery, demonstrating the enduring impact of these operatives who once shaped history unseen. The global fascination with ninja also speaks to a universal admiration for skill applied with precision and discretion. The public image, a figure cloaked in black, moving silently through moonlit rooftops, is a dramatization of principles that were fundamentally human. Observation, adaptability, and strategic thinking are qualities that transcend context, making the ninja a symbol not only of Japanese history, but of timeless ingenuity. Even when legend obscures reality, the lessons embedded in their methods persist. That mastery of the unseen can wield influence as profound as overt action, and that subtlety often outperforms brute force. Art, literature, and film may have romanticized the ninja, but they also ensured that the memory of their discipline endured. In stories told across centuries, the shinobi became both mirror and myth, a reflection of historical cunning and a canvas for imagination. The narrative of the ninja demonstrates how human ingenuity can inspire awe, fear, and admiration long after the events themselves have passed into obscurity. They are, in essence, vessels of both cultural memory and creative interpretation, bridging the gap between fact and imagination, history and myth. The quiet revelation in this evolution is profound. Popular culture, for all its exaggeration, preserves truth in spirit if not in detail. The ninja remain enduring symbols of human potential, discipline, intelligence, adaptability, and the power to operate unseen. The myths remind us that influence need not always be visible to be profound, and that mastery can reside in shadows, waiting to reveal itself only to those who understand its methods and purpose. Even today, the silhouette of a ninja, poised atop a rooftop or vanishing into shadow, continues to captivate. Across continents and media, the image evokes curiosity, respect, and a fascination with the limits of human skill. Beneath the spectacle, the historical foundation endures. Centuries of training, observation, and strategic acumen, honed in the mountains and forests of feudal Japan, echo through every tale, performance, and depiction. In the end, the story of the ninja in popular culture is a continuation of their legacy. Though the historical context may fade, the principles they embodied, patience, precision, adaptability, and the mastery of the unseen, persist in imagination, inspiring generations to ponder what lies beyond perception. They are the shapes of shadow that captivate not because they were supernatural, but because their skill, cunning, and discipline were extraordinary enough to become immortal in story. The ninja of feudal Japan, once silent agents of war and espionage, now inhabit both history and imagination. Their deeds, preserved in legend, art, and film, serve as a bridge between past and present, reminding us that even in the absence of recognition, mastery can endure. Their shadows remain, not merely as phantoms of folklore, but as enduring symbols of human ingenuity, adaptability, and the timeless allure of mystery. In this enduring echo, the ninja teach us a final lesson, that what is unseen often shapes the world more profoundly than what is visible, and that the discipline, intelligence, and subtlety of those who operate in silence can leave an imprint far beyond their own time. From the soil of feudal Japan to the global imagination, the shinobi endure, silent, shadowed, and immortal. Chapter 15: Legacy of Shadows and Silence. Long after the battles had ended, the smoke had cleared, and the mountains of Japan stood quiet beneath the rising sun. The echo of the ninja remained, not as warriors in open combat, nor as celebrated generals inscribed in the annals of history, but as architects of subtle power, masters of observation, patience, and strategy, whose influence endured long after their footsteps had faded into shadow. The legacy of the shinobi is not written in broad strokes, but in the delicate patterns of decision, survival, and ingenuity that shaped human events from behind the veil of secrecy. Picture the silent forests of Iga and Koga, where centuries ago young men and women trained to move unseen, mastering the terrain, the human mind, and the art of timing. Every step, every gesture, every whispered instruction had a purpose. These practices, rooted in necessity, honed through conflict, and tempered by discipline, formed a philosophy that outlived the era of open warfare. The ninja's knowledge of stealth, psychology, and the calculated use of information became principles that transcended their immediate context, influencing strategy long after the swords were sheathed. Their impact is most visible in the art of intelligence and psychological warfare. Samurai lords, generals, and even later military strategists drew upon lessons implicit in ninja operations. The value of preemptive observation, the power of misinformation, and the advantage of controlling perception. The strategies of infiltration, disruption, and manipulation of enemy expectations, once clandestine, echo through modern tactics, demonstrating that the invisible hand can shape outcomes as decisively as force on the battlefield. The ninja, operating in silence, left a blueprint for subtle yet decisive influence, a guide that has inspired warriors and tacticians for generations. Beyond military application, the philosophy of the ninja resonates in broader human endeavor. Observation, patience, and precision are not merely tools of war. They are the foundations of problem-solving, negotiation, and the careful exercise of power. The lessons learned in shadowed mountain halls, passed through meticulous oral instruction and guarded scrolls, extend to realms where subtlety outweighs strength. Adaptability, discretion, and intelligence became legacies not of violence alone, but of mastery in navigating complexity, chaos, and uncertainty. Even as Japan entered eras of peace and modernization, the ninja persisted, not always as active agents, but as living symbols of disciplined ingenuity. Their image, immortalized in folklore, art, and popular imagination, masks a deeper truth. The principles behind their actions endure far longer than the stories themselves. Every strategic maneuver, every silent observation, every patient plan that succeeds unseen carries echoes of shinobi philosophy. The lessons of stealth and subtlety remind us that history is often shaped not by what is obvious, but by what is carefully concealed, considered, and executed with precision. The legacy of the ninja is also a lesson in the nature of influence itself. They teach that power is not always about visibility, force, or recognition. True impact can reside in restraint, in subtlety, and in mastery of timing and circumstance. By altering the course of events without acknowledgement, they demonstrated that the unseen hand often wields the most profound authority. Observation and patience were weapons as potent as blade or bow. Intelligence was armor stronger than steel. Secrecy was a fortress that protected both life and legacy. The enduring cultural fascination with the ninja speaks to this power. Tales of shadowy figures, vanishing acts, and impossible feats are rooted in the awe inspired by their mastery of perception and strategy. Modern portrayals, whether in film, literature, or art, may exaggerate, romanticize, or mythologize their abilities. Yet even within these exaggerations lies a kernel of truth. The shinobi excelled not because of supernatural gifts, but because of relentless discipline, precise planning, and extraordinary skill in reading both the world and its people. Their shadow, therefore, is both literal and metaphorical, a symbol of human ingenuity operating at its most focused and subtle. The philosophical dimension of their legacy is equally profound. The ninja taught that the world is as much shaped by what is unseen as by what is visible. Observation is more powerful than action when unconsidered, patience outweighs impulsiveness, and subtle influence can achieve what force alone cannot. In this sense, the shinobi were philosophers as well as warriors, guiding those who understood them toward a broader understanding of strategy, perception, and the art of living in a complex, unpredictable world. Even today, their imprint remains. In military strategy, intelligence operations, and security studies, principles drawn from their methods echo quietly. In cultural imagination, their figure continues to captivate audiences worldwide, a testament to the enduring appeal of skill exercised with discretion and ingenuity. Yet the true legacy lies not in spectacle, but in the lessons embedded within their discipline. How patience, observation, and adaptability can shape outcomes, influence events, and preserve survival in conditions of uncertainty. The silent footsteps of the ninja are a reminder that history is not shaped solely by those who march openly or fight visibly. It is also written by those who move in the margins, who observe before acting, who plan with foresight, and who wield influence through understanding rather than display. Their enduring presence challenges us to consider the subtle ways in which human ingenuity, knowledge, and secrecy can shape the course of events, lessons that remain relevant long after the era of swords and fortresses has ended. Ultimately, the legacy of the ninja is a testament to the enduring power of mastery over the unseen. Their shadows stretch across centuries, touching both history and imagination. They are symbols of a discipline where intellect, patience, and adaptability are weapons, where influence is measured not in spectacle but in effect, and where the most profound victories often leave no visible mark. Their story reminds us that the quiet, precise, and deliberate actions of the unseen can resonate far longer than any battle won in the open. And so, in the mountains, forests, and valleys of Japan, and in the imaginations of those who seek to understand them, the ninja endure. Silent, shadowed, and enduring, they embody the principles that shaped their world and continue to inspire ours. Ingenuity in chaos, precision in action, patience in planning, and the subtle power of knowledge and discretion. Their footsteps may be invisible, but their impact is eternal, a legacy of shadows and silence that continues to shape history, strategy, and human imagination. In the quiet valleys of Japan, where rivers once carried the blood of countless conflicts and mountains bore silent witness to ambition and betrayal, shadows moved with purpose. These were the footsteps of the ninja, figures who existed between light and darkness, visible only to those trained to notice, or never at all. Their story is woven into the very fabric of feudal Japan, yet it remains largely unseen, whispered across centuries rather than boldly inscribed in history's pages. They were never celebrated like samurai, never glorified in open battle, yet their influence rippled through the course of empires, shaping events as subtly as the wind sculpts the mountains. Long before myths and theatre immortalized them, ninja were born of necessity. In the 15th century valleys and rugged mountains, where clans waged relentless wars for land and power, survival demanded more than the sword. Peasants, outcasts, and farmers, trained in observation, stealth, and cunning, became the first shadowed operatives. They moved unseen through forests and villages, blending with the landscape, and transformed necessity into mastery. In their silence, they learned the fundamental truth that power often resides not in what is displayed, but in what is concealed. As war intensified, these shadowed figures coalesced into clans, each cultivating unique skills in espionage, sabotage, and subterfuge. Iga and Koga became cradles of this clandestine art, where techniques passed from master to apprentice, and the line between skill and philosophy blurred. Observation, patience, and precise action were as vital as any weapon, and the ninja became living embodiments of strategy itself. Their tools, shuriken, grappling hooks, smoke bombs, and hidden blades, were not symbols of honor but instruments of purpose, forged for efficiency, adaptability, and survival. Beyond the battlefield, their influence was profound. Ninja infiltrated the courts of Daimyo, disguised as monks, merchants, or entertainers, gathering intelligence that could topple regimes. The whisper of a plan, the disappearance of a courier, the subtle shift of perception. These were victories as tangible as any siege. They became masters of unseen power, proving that knowledge, observation, and discretion could shape the fate of nations without leaving a trace. Their genius was not solely tactical, it was philosophical. The ninja lived by codes of loyalty, discipline, and silence. Betrayal was unthinkable, and restraint was a weapon as sharp as any blade. Their lives, structured by ritual and secrecy, were exercises in mastery over both themselves and the world around them. Even in acts of assassination or sabotage, there was purpose, strategy, and deliberation, a calculated application of skill that set them apart from criminals or mercenaries. They operated as the invisible hand of history, shaping outcomes with precision rather than spectacle. Over centuries, as Japan stabilized under the Tokugawa shogunate, the role of the ninja diminished. Opportunities for war vanished, and the clans adapted, disbanded, or retreated into secrecy. Yet even in decline, their philosophy endured. Hidden scrolls, oral instruction, and secluded training halls preserved the art of observation, strategy, and adaptability. The ninja had become custodians of knowledge, ensuring that the principles forged in shadow and chaos would survive, waiting to be rediscovered by those willing to see beyond myth. With time, legend enveloped reality. The ninja became figures of folklore, theater, and eventually global cinema, their abilities exaggerated into the supernatural, vanishing into thin air, controlling elements, or moving with impossible agility. These tales thrilled imaginations, yet behind every exaggeration lay human skill perfected over generations. Observation, intelligence, patience, and subtlety, the true power of the ninja, remained at the heart of every story, reminding us that mastery does not require spectacle. Influence is often silent, yet enduring. The enduring fascination with ninja reveals more than cultural curiosity. It reflects a universal admiration for ingenuity operating beyond perception. Their figure became a symbol of human adaptability and resilience, an embodiment of the idea that subtlety, patience, and knowledge can shape events as decisively as visible power. From military strategy to martial arts, intelligence operations to storytelling, the lessons of the ninja ripple through centuries, demonstrating that the unseen hand often writes history as effectively as the sword. Ultimately, the legacy of the ninja is a mirror to humanity itself. In their stories, we see ambition tempered by discipline, loyalty tested by necessity, and intellect applied with precision. They remind us that influence does not always demand recognition, that quiet mastery can reshape the world, and that the most profound forces are often those hidden from view. Their shadows linger not as ghosts of war, but as enduring symbols of ingenuity, resilience, and the careful, deliberate shaping of destiny. Even today, the footprints of the shinobi are visible only to those who look closely. The lessons of observation, patience, adaptability, and precision echo in strategy, decision-making, and the subtle exercise of influence across countless domains. They serve as a reminder that history is not only the record of battles fought openly, but also of the silent, deliberate acts that steer the course of events, often without acknowledgement. The ninjas' power lay in their invisibility, and it is this quiet authority that endures. In the end, the whispers of the ninja carve a path through time, connecting past to present. Their story teaches that mastery of the unseen is as consequential as mastery of the visible, that knowledge, discipline, and subtlety are instruments that can shape empires and human events. From the mountains and forests of feudal Japan to the theaters, films, and imagination of the modern world, the spirit of the ninja persists. Silent, shadowed, and enduring, they remind us that influence need not always be visible, and that the quietest hands often guide the most profound currents of history. And so, as we stand in the light of centuries past, listening to the faint echoes of a world once shaped by shadows, we realize the true power of the ninja, not in spectacle, not in glory, but in wisdom applied with patience, precision, and insight. Their legacy is everywhere, woven into the tactics of leaders, the strategies of warriors, and the imagination of storytellers. The ninja existed where shadow and light intertwined, shaping history in ways both subtle and enduring. The final revelation lingers, quiet yet profound. The shinobi were more than warriors. They were philosophers of secrecy, architects of invisible influence, and masters of subtle power. Their footsteps may have vanished from the mountains and valleys of Japan, yet their imprint remains, etched into the strategies, stories, and imaginations of generations. History, after all, is carved not only by those who act in the open, but by those who move in silence, unseen, yet shaping the world in ways the eye cannot always perceive. In this way, the ninja teach us a timeless lesson, that the most lasting impact is often made in quiet shadows, where patience, observation, and intelligence converge to guide the fate of men, nations, and the course of history itself. Their story is a whisper across the centuries, reminding us that the unseen hand is as mighty as the one held in the light, and that the subtle forces of knowledge and strategy leave echoes that outlive the loudest clamor of war.